Hi dear friends of the internet, I'm recording this on the 28th of April, 2023. I felt that sharing my experiences with you will help alleviate the loneliness during my long trips and late nights working on unveiling the most difficult criminal cases. After spending the last few years living on caffeine and dedicating myself to the pursuit of truth, I have come to the realization that there may be some among you who may be interested in following the cases I encounter on a day-to-day basis, and that you may even find them eye-opening. Or maybe you are simply captivated by the sound of my voice, in which case, I would be delighted to read your comments. Assuming I manage to upload this recording during my travel to Linnyshaw Moss, but more on that later. Before we continue, I must warn you that the stories I will share with you are not for the faint of heart. They may contain disturbing and horrifying details that could shock or deeply disturb some listeners. So, proceed with caution. But I do believe that delving deeper into the mysteries of the human nature and psychology will aid in our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Or at least, that is the theory. My dear friend, let me take you on a journey to the northwest of Manchester, where the town of Walkden stands proud amidst its rich history in coal mining and textile manufacturing. But do not be fooled by its industrial past, for much of this land has been reclaimed and transformed by the hands of the local community. And there, my dear friend, lies the Blackleach Country Park, a testament to the tenacity of the human spirit. Once a desolate wasteland, a chemical waste tip and a dye factory, it now stands as a thriving nature reserve, complete with winding walking tracks, sprawling playing fields, and a serene reservoir. But do not be fooled by its tranquility, for as you venture further north, the rugged terrain and dense forest give way to a more ominous reality. Ah yes, Linnyshaw Moss, the stuff of legend and Guinness World Records. This treacherous locale, bordering onto modern industrial estates and major arterial roads, is the site of the widest section of motorway in all of Great Britain. 17 adjacent lanes of traffic whizzing by at any given time, a sight to behold indeed. But let me tell you, my dear friend, in late December of 1991, Linnyshaw Moss became synonymous with something far more sinister. I've been informed of a most curious case, one that has been puzzling investigators for over 3 decades now. The man at Linnyshaw Moss discovered on the holiest day of Christmas in 1991, his body gruesomely dismembered, scattered about in the thick woods of Manchester's Linnyshaw Moss. Yet, despite the valiant efforts of our esteemed law enforcement, the identity of this unfortunate soul has eluded us all these years. Oh, the mystery of it all, the intrigue that surrounds this enigmatic figure. We must delve deeper, my dear colleagues, with every tool at our disposal. For the sake of justice and closure, we must uncover the truth behind the man at Linnyshaw Moss. After several days of heavy rain, a local man walking his dog through dense undergrowth in the Linnyshaw Moss spotted the lower leg of a man wrapped in a black garbage bag protruding from the ground. The remains were found several yards away from the side of the M61 motorway, close by to where an old disused railway line was located. "Riddle of horror victim found in woods," read the headline of the Manchester City News. In Scotland, the Herald opted for a much simpler "body found in woods" to break the story. What was clear, however, was that this was not an accident. Police were alerted and called to the scene, and immediately began to look for other remains in the general vicinity. Their search turned up a gruesome find. Partially concealed in a shallow grave, they recovered another leg, and this time, the severed head of a middle-aged man. As the investigation into the remains found in Linnyshaw Moss continued, forensic testing was deployed in an attempt to identify the man. Yet, as we delved deeper into the case, we found ourselves encountering a series of obstacles. The victim was believed to be of white European descent and was estimated to be between 40 and 60 years old. He had brown hair, now graying, and would have stood at a height of around 5'7" to 5'8", 170 to 172 centimeters. While there was relatively little to go on, police discovered that the man had previously undergone a surgical procedure to remove the toenail from his left foot. The only item retrieved from the scene was a plain black shoulder bag adorned with a white Nike tick. The garbage bags used to conceal the remains were traced back to a butcher in a suburb of Pendlebury, but inquiries into this lead proved fruitless. Identifying the man was no easy feat, as only a scant amount of remains were found at the burial site. Aside from the head, we recovered only a thigh bone and 2 partial lower legs, disarticulated at the knee joint. Though police strongly suspected foul play, the lack of additional remains made it nearly impossible to establish a cause of death. Furthermore, the man was edentulous, lacking any teeth, and appeared to have been this way for at least a decade before his demise. Reports suggest that he may have worn dentures, yet this remains unconfirmed. The absence of dental records and teeth made identification and comparison to other missing persons cases particularly challenging. The initial investigation by the authorities centered on the search for additional remains in the vicinity where the head and legs were discovered. Though it was initially believed that the body had only been left at the location for a few weeks, post-mortem examinations determined that the interval was closer to 3 months. News reports mention that the peat-covered ground around Linnyshaw Moss may have preserved the remains for a longer period of time than anticipated, as bog ecosystems containing peat are prevalent in northwest England and are known to promote natural mummification. Experts were brought in, including an archaeologist from Bradford University, to assist with the search for the remainder of the body. Based on their advice, a 25-yard section of land was excavated to a depth of 2 feet. Even a helicopter equipped with thermal imaging equipment was employed, but unfortunately, no additional remains were detected. There was a point in the investigation where the idea of excavating the entire Linnyshaw Moss area was being considered, but it was ultimately dismissed due to the potential impact on local wildlife. The motorway verges along the M61 near Linnyshaw Moss were searched as well, but to no avail. The search continues, dear friends. In the days following the discovery of the victim, investigators quickly dismissed the notion that this was a gangland slaying. It appeared that the purpose of dismembering the body was not to mask the victim's identity, but rather to facilitate disposal of the remains. However, they did surmise that the perpetrators hailed from the local area, as Linnyshaw Moss is a relatively secluded spot. During the inquest into the matter, law enforcement officials divulged that early investigative efforts had been hampered by a number of false leads. One such lead came from a well-intentioned informant at a walked-in homeless shelter, who claimed to possess intel on 5 individuals involved in the murder at Linnyshaw Moss. Astonishingly, some reports suggest that this lead was given top priority as the victim was known to be a regular at a nearby pub. The informant later recanted, admitting that the information was fabricated. Though the authorities contemplated prosecution, he was ultimately let off with a caution. It seems we may have a break in the case. Investigators have turned their attention towards a group of Irish caravan travelers who had taken up residence in the Linnyshaw Moss area until October of 1991. In their pursuit of leads, the authorities journeyed to an industrial site in Deeside where the group had been encamped and subjected them to a meticulous interrogation. Despite their best efforts and subsequent inquiries with the UK Gypsy Council, no evidence surfaced that any members of the traveling community had been reported missing. During the initial stages of the investigation, police came across a burnt-out tent in the vicinity of where the remains were found, along with a butcher's cleaver that raised suspicion. However, a brief inquiry discovered that these belonged to a local vagrant who was swiftly ruled out as a suspect. At the outset of the case, police appeals resulted in a list of 250 potential matches for the Linnyshaw Moss victim. This number later grew to 414, with most leads proving fruitless. Investigators even looked into the case of a Manchester resident who had been missing for over a year, but it appears that they were not a match for the unidentified man. To aid in the identification process, several facial composites were produced. The first, an artist impression, was said to bear a remarkable resemblance to the victim but failed to yield any useful tips. A second composite, created by digitally enhancing a morgue photograph of the man, was only published in profile and may not have been a reliable likeness. Over 100 officers were dispatched to conduct door-to-door inquiries in the Walkden and Kearsley areas, visiting around 3,000 homes and interviewing more than 7,000 individuals. However, these efforts produced no substantial leads and raised the possibility that the man was not from the area as previously believed. Regrettably, due to a lack of progress in the investigation, the dedicated incident room for the case was scaled down in March of the following year. Although frustrated by their lack of success, the authorities remain hopeful that one day, Linnyshaw Moss will reveal its secret. On the subject of the case of the unidentified man at Linnyshaw Moss, we have some new information to report. In 1998, police launched a renewed appeal for information in the hopes of shedding light on the mystery. Unfortunately, despite their continued efforts, the identity of the man and the cause of his death remain elusive. But then, in 2006, a fire at the Klein & Klein factory in Walkden led to the discovery of a human body in the rubble. Initially, it was thought that these remains could be linked to the man found at Linnyshaw Moss. However, this theory was soon dismissed by police, after a post-mortem revealed that the remains at the factory had been there for a different period of time than those found in the other case. As we start to run out of information from the investigation of the man from Linnyshaw Moss murder case, we come across some of the most enigmatic and perplexing mysteries that still remain unsolved. The first among them is the identity of the victim. Despite the tireless efforts of forensic experts and law enforcement, the victim's name remains unknown to this day. Without this crucial piece of information, it has been an arduous task to identify potential suspects or establish a motive for the crime. Equally baffling is the motive behind the crime. The circumstances surrounding the murder are shrouded in mystery, and a motive has yet to be established. This absence of motive has hindered the investigators' ability to determine why the victim was killed and by whom. Adding to the mystery is the location of the murder. It is unclear whether the victim was killed at the site where his remains were found in Linnyshaw Moss or somewhere else. This lack of clarity has made it difficult for investigators to establish a timeline of events leading up to the murder or identify any potential witnesses. Last but not least, we come to the most elusive of all the mysteries, the identity of the killer or killers. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, including DNA analysis and numerous appeals for information, the identity of the person or persons responsible for the murder remains unknown. Without a suspect, it has been a daunting task to bring the case to a resolution. But as they say, the truth is out there and we will continue to search for it. While various theories have been suggested over the years, none have provided a conclusive answer to this perplexing mystery. One of the theories that has been suggested is that the victim may have been a sex worker, given that the remains were found in an area frequented by sex workers. However, this theory remains unconfirmed and unsubstantiated. Another theory is that the victim may have been involved in drug dealing, and the murder could be related to a drug dispute. However, there is no solid evidence to support this theory. Some have even suggested that the murder may have been related to organized crime, given the location of the remains in an area known for criminal activity. Yet again, there is no concrete evidence to substantiate this theory. Lastly, there have been suggestions that the victim may have been the target of a hate crime. Some have pointed to the missing front tooth and prominent nose of the victim as possible indicators of his belonging to a marginalized group. However, there is no evidence to confirm this theory. In summary, the Linnyshaw Moss murder case remains one of the most mysterious unsolved cases to date. Theories have been proposed, but no clear motive or suspect has been identified. The authorities continue to call on anyone with information to come forward and help bring closure to this enigma. As we reach the end of our investigation into the Linnyshaw Moss murder case, I must say that Manchester is colder than I expected, but the exquisite food has compensated for the lack of sun this time of the year. This was a very intriguing and sometimes frustrating experience. But fear not, dear friends, for we have not lost hope in cracking this case. As we have seen, there have been many theories and speculations regarding the identity of the victim, the motive for the crime, and the identity of the killer or killers. Some have suggested that the victim was a sex worker. Others have proposed that he was involved in drug dealing or that the murder was related to organized crime. And while these theories have yet to be proven, I cannot help but wonder if perhaps we are looking in all the wrong places. Maybe the killer is hiding in plain sight, disguised as a traffic light or a fire hydrant. Or perhaps the victim was actually a time traveler from the future who accidentally stumbled into our timeline and met an untimely demise. In all seriousness, the Linnyshaw Moss murder case is a tragic and serious matter, and my heart goes out to the victim and their loved ones. I implore anyone with information to come forward and assist law enforcement in bringing justice to the victim and closure to this case. Until then, I will continue to enjoy my coffee and pie, and keep my eyes and ears open for any leads that may come our way. And who knows, maybe one day we will finally crack this case. And it will be thanks to the power of dreams, intuition, and I don't really know. I'm really tired and it's long past midnight, so I will try to go to bed now. Thanks for the company. It really makes a difference. I wish you guys good night.